All right, here we go. This is the game one between Pluto the Brave and Gruppler in this 2021 TAC Open tournament. This is Pluto the Brave in white and Gruppler in black. And we also have co-commentator on the line here. We have fwwwwwibib, or Fwib, as I like to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's a gallant effort. Simon, howdy. But yeah, looking forward to this. This should be an interesting match. I think Pluto definitely goes in as a pretty strong favorite, but Groppler's no slouch.
Yeah, he is no slouch, but also he is famous in the TAC community for being the creator of the ptn.ninja tool, which is the absolute best tool to use when analyzing games or solving puzzles or creating puzzles for that matter. It's fantastic for a lot of different uses, and it's also used in the Discord bot to play asynchronously. So a lot of fun to do with that PTN Ninja tool. It looks like we've got the adjacent corner opening right off from the bat, which is what we've come to expect in these. Sometimes we'll see opposite corners, but I don't think I've seen any hug openings so far.
I haven't seen any hugs, no, and that's an interesting variation from Pluto straight out of the gate, going D4 rather than D3 for that kind of center opening, a little bit further away from his own initial flat stone,
Yeah,
which
I find that odd and a little counterintuitive, but maybe
mm,
he has some plan that he wants to enact here.
yeah, absolutely. Like, so we've now got this kind of horizontal mirror going, which I've seen a couple of times this tournament, but hasn't been uh, particularly common beforehand. Um, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see who sort of goes off that line first.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I wouldn't be surprised to see Pluto drop his own cap on something like D2 just to try and get that connection back towards that F1 flat.
I can definitely see that, but I do feel like this is currently much better for black than it is for white, even though white does have the momentum right now.
Hmm.
Though, oh, that's interesting. I really expected white to play a flat at e4 and then be able to come down around once black places that capstone, likely on the next turn. And so I
Mm-hmm.
expected the e4 flat, but now black covers that spot up with their own capstone. Also interesting because they're not taking advantage of the new opportunity they have to have momentum. So,
Yeah, but then by placing on D2, Pluto says, okay, well, you can have the momentum back. But I think it's an interesting tactic here from Pluto, kind of starting things off up on that 3 and 4 rank, and then suddenly sort of switching to further down the board, and has potentially isolated the black capstone a little bit from where the most of the action is going. So,
yeah, and I
uh,
actually like White's position a lot more than I did just 2 moves ago. Now I'd say White is strongly in control of this game, whereas before I would say, I don't know, it's pretty even, maybe Black's ahead, but after that capstone capture and placement, now that we've got White kind of firmly in control here, it looks like they definitely know what's going on. And I would expect to
hmm.
see on the next couple moves probably an E1 played from White to make that connection, the anchor point, go for that vertical and horizontal line at the same time. It just seems like the play to go for.
Yeah, definitely feeling good for Pluto here, especially after being able to fill in that C2 spot and get that connection
I was really
to the
surprised that was left
capstone.
open. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think A4 from Gruppler on turn 8, they were probably thinking that they need to cut off this potential horizontal threat, but that's just a little bit too far away from the main action to be a robust defense, I think.
yeah. Now we've got this capstone coming over onto D4, and I don't know how good that move is.
Well, I think it's important for Gruppler to get the
Capstone into the game
capstone
for sure.
involved somehow. Yeah, but as we can see now, it's not an immediate response to this threat. So now gruppler is forced to capture with a flat stone rather than the cap in order to cut off that attack threat onto b3.
Now white could continue putting on pressure and play at c5, but it would give that capstone an excuse to come over onto c4. And so I think that's probably not what Pluto wants to do here. He might decide to just play over at a4 and plan on winning a capture war on b4 at some point.
A4 is an option. I could also see Pluto deciding to play either b1 or a2, just to kind of keep the action down on this lower half of the board away from that black capstone.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good
I also
plan.
wouldn't be surprised at some point to see a wall on either a4 or b5 to try and come down and capture that stack with the white captive underneath, and then look to spread down for the road over b3.
That is a good way to go about this. I think that at some point, black's capstone is probably going to have to come down to d2 if he really wants to stop all the stuff that white's doing. But instead decides to drop that wall there at d1 to really put a wrench in all of the plans that white has going on. But now white's placement at c1 was excellent, but now I see b1 for white, which renews that horizontal threat.
Yeah, and this is a pretty strong defensive wall for black. I imagine it will move over onto e1. No, it goes up. Okay.
But now
I'm not such a fan of that because
in.
you can just fill back in on d1, and now the wall's forced to just come straight back down onto d1.
Yeah, there's really no other play.
I suppose a1 onto b1, but that, again, capturing with the flat in this spot feels pretty weak.
Pluto definitely showing why he is the favorite in this particular game. He's making some really smart plays, doing some really great flat placements, and gruppler falling just a bit behind here. Though gruppler is able to make attack threat on the next turn. Not anymore. Now we've got attack threat from white by bringing that capstone down to b2 or bringing a2 over to b2.
Or just placing
or
on
placing
c3.
At c3.
So, gruppler's going to have to either capture onto c1 or, like we said, bring that wall back down onto d1 and then look to go do something like, or across to c2. That also works. I don't mind that.
I think it was really important that he not move b1 over to c1 because that would have caused c2 to come down, and that would have been a road going upward or to the left. So not quite Tinue, but very, very close to one.
Yeah.
And it looks like he missed
the throw.
He missed the throw, and there's the win for PlutoTheBrave, taking game 1 over gruppler. It was well played from Pluto. Just a couple missed moves there from gruppler, and missing that end attack threat, of course.
Yeah, a really strong game from Pluto. I think really showing how to push that momentum from white, really take advantage of the extra piece on the board, that extra bit of being able to be a little bit more aggressive. And especially after that sort of somewhat surprise opening, I think Pluto navigated the sort of early mid-game really well.
Yeah, he really did. And obviously we were talking smack about his opening, but it seemed to work out okay. Looked like he had a plan for it. Right around, let's see, where was that move that he played? He had it set up kind of around move 7. And then when he finally played c2+, I was like, ooh, even if black fills in at c2, I still really like white's position here. And so I think that his plan of setting up above and below that black line and then bringing that capstone up was just really great. And that whole position on move 8 just seems really, really strong for white. And it looks like they're going straight into game 2, and they've already begun. And we get a Knights opening from gruppler. I wonder, there is a particularly strong player who is sort of coined that knight's opening as their go-to. Who is that? Can you remind me again?
That's a very good question. I think the answer you're looking for is Tactician Bot, from whom I got the idea to start doing that more regularly. But yes, no, I've definitely been a strong proponent of the Knight's move. I'm still yet to be convinced that it's not the strongest opening for White, and I'm going to probably continue to play it in most of my games until I am proved otherwise.
I have also
I
started
think
playing the knight's opening with White, and I kind of like it. I think it's strong, and it's basically the same thing often as the mirrored opening that you see so often where people play up, for example, in this game at D3, and then Black would play it at C3. And so it's kind of the same thing, except now if Black wants to do the common move of placing a capstone on the other side, they're right up against the wall, which is
exactly.
pretty much never a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is kind of I think for me, the thing that stands out as a benefit of the Knight's move, it's just that it forces Black's counterplay closer to the edge of the board, so that when White moves into the second phase of the game, where you're not just building in a road and trying to make the first threat, you are now closer to the center of the board and you're able to make your threats
And if there's anyone I'm going to listen to about
earlier
opening
on.
strategy, it's probably going to be the reigning champion and current #1 in this tournament. So it's good that you're here talking about this. But I think it's interesting right now that Gruppler, instead of continuing his momentum, did basically what Pluto did in the previous game, played his capstone first on the other side, and is sort of playing into that same sort of positioning that we saw in the last game, except it's rotated 90 degrees.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That is an interesting. I wonder whether that's kind of an intentional sort of taking on what Pluto did in the last game. And I think what's going to be really interesting to see in this game now is how Pluto deploys his capstone in order to kind of combat this opening from Groppler.
And if I'm Black right now, I really want to force White to make a capture with something other than the capstone so I can fill in where that flat moved from with my own capstone. And I think that that's sort of key right now for what Black wants to do, but whether or not he can get White to make a flat on flat capture is another question.
Yeah, there's really not anywhere that looks great for Pluto to drop his cap just yet.
I mean, the best
I mean,
spot right now
it's
that I'm looking at is D5.
yeah, and that is again just a little bit far away from the rest of what's going on here. I think I would be tempted to, as Pluto is doing at the moment, like you do want to get your capstone down relatively early so that it can start to affect the game. But if there's not a suitably advantageous place to put it, it's better to keep it in reserve and you know wait until you do have that opportune moment where it can really make a difference straight
Yeah.
away.
You can't always follow all the guidelines that are laid out in the Capstones video of TAC University, but you can follow most of them, hopefully, to make a good placement. But here we're seeing Black
Ooh,
decide to
okay.
play a capstone against the wall, which is a risky position, and I don't feel like White is going to make the E3 left move to try and isolate the capstone. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's still a risky play to play it up against the wall like that.
Yeah, I would definitely, as White, be tempted to make that E3 left capture. I'm not sure that it's the right move to make, but anytime I see the opponent's capstone going down next to an edge and next to only one of my pieces, it is, yeah, very tempting to try and isolate it further.
Yeah, but then you know that that capstone would just follow right over onto E3, and that
Yeah,
would be
or
a
you
dangerous
place
situation.
a flat stone on E3 and then you've given them the opportunity to make a hard cap, which can come back to bite you later. So I think
Absolutely.
Gruppler makes the right move by not making that capture, although I'm not a huge fan of the F2 placement just because it gives that capstone another place that it can go.
I
I would have
do
preferred
like F2 though because
E1.
I feel like Black wanted to place at F2 himself, and I feel like F2 might be good for White there because of that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That'll be interesting to see. whether that spot comes into play later on. It could also have been a way of kind of trying to tempt the capstone to stay on the edge by capturing down.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so we see both capstones now making those captures coming in towards the center and towards each other.
I don't know. It's fairly even on the board right now, but I would probably give the advantage to black slightly just because of the positioning. But white does have a few moves that can turn that around, I think.
I think white filling in on c3 here is going to be pretty good for gruppler.
I agree.
Yeah, it just kind of links up that stuff. It works both horizontally and vertically. And yeah, it gives gruppler a chance to push that momentum, start making some threats. Now, and definitely I'll be looking towards d1 potentially as my next play as white if Pluto leaves it
Yeah, and I was looking
vacant.
at maybe E1 for black. And the reason for that is you could come over onto D1 if necessary. You could come up to E2, and then the E1 placement can come up and make that connection between the capstone and maybe an F3 or that F4 area, and sort of go for that horizontal line around. Can also be part of a vertical line that black builds with that capstone. So I feel
Yeah,
like E1 does a lot of those things more offensively, and looks like he's going for that play.
yeah, seems like
But
Pluto
D1 would
agrees
be a
with
more
you.
defensive move for sure.
Yeah. Um, it is worth noting that Gruppler is not that far away from a horizontal road threat along sort of 3, 4, and 5 as well over the top of that. So that's something that Pluto is going to need to just be aware of and not commit too much of his time to worrying about this lower third of the board. Okay, and goes for the capture onto E2,
Now I like the capture onto
trying
E2
to.
because white's not going to recapture it at any point because black's got the capstone there to take care of that. Although white can set it up by placing at A3 to make it so black can't recapture onto that flat.
Yeah, definitely. And I think A3 is definitely a move to consider for white because it also obviously gets you that connection on the left hand edge of the board, and you're only then one move away from making attack threat, and
Hmm.
actually would be able to make attack threat in response to what I imagine is going to be Pluto's next move, which is placing on E6 to make attack threat.
Yeah. Or instead of placing on E6, may decide to go for the D4 right.
Yeah, and that would take that flat out of the way of the white capstone. So that's definitely a consideration.
And it helps stop
And
what white's potential road threats are going for.
other things I would be looking at here if I wasn't going to place A3 for white would be F5 is an option, or if you want to be uh, a little bit more aggressive, placing a flat on D2, kind of trusting that you're going to be able to shut off this vertical threat from black and start looking to make a vertical threat of your own. Or that was going to be my next suggestion was the wall on D2, which is a little bit more of a conservative play, but there is some potential to use that wall offensively by releasing the captive on E2. And if Gruppler captures onto E2 now, that the crush from the capstone is not available because it would
Unless
leave.
black plays at A3 first,
Yes. Yeah.
which black can do on this turn to allow himself the capture. Or the
Yeah.
crush, rather.
Gruppler could then just place at, for example, A4 or B5 and would again sort of semi-pin
Well,
that
C6
capstone.
or D6 also would be there, so black wouldn't be able to smash
Yeah.
going in the vertical direction there. Or even E6.
Yeah.
3 different placements to essentially pin that capstone. Or 4, B5 also. And again, A4, so 5, 6, maybe 6 placements? I don't know. A lot of placements that white can make after black plays at E3, so you're right.
Yeah, gruppler's position here is looking like that there are a lot of different connections available within this board setup. So yeah, it's a very interesting decision point for Pluto here, whether he decides to sort of be
he
aggressive.
does go for the A3.
Okay.
So we'll see if white decides to play any of those other moves, like, oh, goes for the A2. So that would also keep black from smashing on the next turn.
Yep, and it also, I suppose, works a little bit towards a vertical threat. If white ends up playing B1, then you've got the capture over onto B2 to work that vertical threat. I don't think either of those are the moves I necessarily would have made. I think A3 for Pluto just feels like it's a little bit too far away from what he's trying to do. I suppose it could have worked towards a vertical threat along that kind of A and B file. But yeah, it feels, I don't know. I'm not sure that Pluto had many good moves in that spot.
I think that Pluto needs to start moving into a more aggressive area right now and start playing for his own threats. And then when that wall comes over, he can wall on D2.
Yeah. That would at least minimize some of the damage, I suppose. Okay, it does look like he's decided that he wants to start trying to build a threat along A and B. And you can see here sort of the power of having your capstone closer to the center of the board. Like Gruppler's capstone is just completely blocking the black capstone off from having any real influence on what's going on outside of just this very narrow sort of E and F corridor.
All right, so white playing up at E6 and then black following it up with an A5, trying to really get those threats in for black. White looks to be...
Yeah, as far as I can tell, white can't immediately make a threat at this point. I think I would probably have preferred either C6 or D6 from white's point of view, just to be able to sort of retain that momentum with, for example, a B1 placement on this turn. Whereas now Pluto's the one with the momentum. So Gruppler decides to play A6 and say, okay, I'm not going to let you just make this threat immediately. But A6 doesn't really advance any of Gruppler's own threats.
Let's look at the flat count right now. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 for black, including the two coming. So black is ahead in terms of flats. So probably why white wouldn't want to drop a wall on A6 and why they did decide to go for a flat instead.
Yeah, that makes sense. Worth obviously noting that white does have, if at some point Gruppler's able to capture onto E2, then that spread down onto E1 would be, or across onto C2 would be a positive flat count move. But yeah, Pluto's done a decent job so far of not having to make too many captures, and therefore not expose himself to more liabilities in the flat game than necessary. And I think that's what we saw in the first game from Pluto, was a very aggressive strategy as white, really trying to make a priority to retain the momentum and make those threats and force Gruppler into making difficult decisions. And I think Gruppler's just been a little bit passive in this game, hasn't really sort of pushed home the advantage as white, although I still think they're in a decent spot here, but it is closer than I would like as white at this stage of the game, because obviously as we move further into the game, closer to the game going to flats, that Comey does come into play and gives black something of an advantage.
Now here I'm looking at a lot of the different moves that black has at their disposal, playing at b5 to make the threat, going b2 left to make the threat, some other options as well. I'm just kind of wondering, maybe b6 a left as well. What should black be doing here? Because there's a lot of different options that they can go for, but there's a lot of different ways that white can dismantle that threat that it won't be able to be immediately renewed. Does decide to go for the b2 left here, which I feel like is a pretty good one. It is a tag threat white needs to respond to, and the way white responds to this is going to break up their potential threat that they were going for in the vertical direction. And so
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting choice.
I feel like that was a good way to go about it. Now we're likely going to see a fill-in at b3. If not a wall, then a flat.
Yeah, I kind of expect to see a wall at b3 here for Pluto personally, although he might decide that the flat is going to be good enough. I mean, I was a little bit surprised by the b2 left capture. I probably would have just played at b5 myself, just because, again, capturing with flat stones, if you can avoid it, best to do so. But I understand that he wanted to make, because the capture was a slightly more, it gave Gruppler fewer options as to how to defend.
Now I think that we've got these two walls here. Black doesn't need to capture onto a3 at this point. I think that black may decide to make the capture onto a3 after b2 makes a capture. And so maybe playing up at b5 or down at c1 might be the better move here.
Yeah, I think the only argument I might make for capturing now is that if Pluto hadn't done that, then Gruppler could have played 2a3 minus, and then those potential captives you could be freeing are protected by the b2 wall. But as it is, Pluto does decide to go ahead and take that capture straight away. So now the question for Gruppler is, do I want to follow suit and capture over onto a2? Or do you do something else, like, for example, d6, c1, I suppose, would be the places I would be looking, or b5, possibly. And there's also still that capture onto e2, which, yeah, the crush is not currently an option, because if the black capstone crushes, then c6 or d6 would give a vertical road to white.
Or d5 right.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of choices here. If it was me, I think I would be just taking that capture onto a2. Prevent
The positive
that.
flat differential move from white, yeah. Because you're ahead on flats, and you can probably play for flats the rest of this game if you're really careful about it.
Yeah, well, it is white's move still. So yeah, I think that's a reason for white to take that now, is to guarantee being able to get that positive flat count move and look to kind of get back into the flat game.
Definitely.
Okay, plays f5 instead.
Okay, he's going to go for that vertical threat up in that direction.
Yeah.
And then,
So Pluto makes the drawbridge threat first.
yep.
So I imagine we have to see. Oh wow. Goes. I mean that does prevent the road, but I'm not sure why you would play the wall on b3 rather than just capturing onto a2.
Yeah, I think he just. I'm not sure. I am not sure about that.
Unless there's maybe some thought of at some point jumping over with the capstone and crushing that wall to make a hard cap and do some shenanigans that way, but that feels unlikely.
For sure. Now black is a little lost, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, so Pluto plays c1, and that does just feel like okay, this game is going to go to flats. Let's place place somewhere that will advance my flat count, isn't in danger of losing to a big FCD move, and is also potentially making it more difficult for gruppler to make threats.
Yeah, I mean, Goel just saying that he thinks that the wall dropped on B3 is to keep black from making the positive FCD move. But, I mean, I don't think he needs to worry about that as much right now. I think that him moving B2 left would have allowed him to make a positive FCD move. And that's more important, I think, than stopping the +2 from black because he's already behind. Black is already winning on FCD. And black just needs to keep placing. But yeah. And again, Gueljo clarifying, not an advocacy, just trying for an explanation.
Yeah, like I can see the sort of reasoning behind that, but it's also important to remember that by placing the wall, you are sort of giving up one in your FCD count because you haven't placed a flat stone. So now here I could see Pluto choosing to place the wall on B2 for the same reason, but given that he's ahead,
It makes more sense.
well, I believe ahead still. Just a quick count.
I'm pretty certain he is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
14, 16 to black, I think.
Yes, 16 for black, so definitely ahead. 13 for white. So 16 to 13. 17 to 13 now. Now, I don't know. That's a little risky, I think, placing up there. I feel like at some point, black's going to need to make the first capture up in this upper right quadrant. Just because if he doesn't, white's going to, and it's going to require more captures from black that I think are going to end with him losing the capture war. And then also, yeah, Goel just saying, gotta look for the board fill as well. So black may be playing for that board fill right now.
Yeah, and gruppler is going to need to keep an eye out for that. Making the capture onto E2 opens up another space, so that takes that a little bit further away, at least.
I think black should drop a wall on D2 here to really keep that position closed off. And also more walls makes it easier to fill up that board. And he is ahead in terms of flat count.
Yeah, although obviously white does now have 2+2 moves that they can make. Spreading over onto C2 and down onto E1, and that will
pretty much level things up, I think, on the flat count.
Well, now it's currently 14-16. Black can place at, for example, A2, and to make it 14-17. And then white is unable to make that +1 or that +2 FCD move because it would lead to a board fill and
Yeah.
win for Pluto. So I think Pluto can try and force this by placing.
It's getting pretty close, I think. So that means that I would expect to see A2 here, to be honest, from Pluto, unless he's got something clever in mind. And then, Gruppler has to be looking for, okay, where can I make threats such that I'm forcing Pluto to capture rather than continuing to place and keeping us close to the board fill.
And I think the answer to that is by making a capture in that upper right quadrant. Making like a D5 right, for example.
That's an option. The wall crush onto B3 is also attack threat at this point, but it goes the direction you were thinking onto, or rather than D5 goes for E4 to the right.
And now black is going to have to make a capture, which puts it farther away from a board fill.
Yeah. Kind of expect the capstone to just come over onto F3 here. That seems like the most obvious
I do like
response. Okay, captures down instead. I don't love that from black's point of view. I think it's introducing. Oh, wow. Okay, one
There's attack
D3
threat.
to the left, leaving a black flatstone on D3. So now Pluto's gonna have to make a capture.
I like C6 minus.
Yeah, make attack threat of its own, although the white cap can then jump up onto that stack if it wants to, and you've got
Then that's attack threat over to the right.
It is attack threat of the right, actually, yeah. And well, wait, no, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
No, it is attack threat of the right with the 2 you leave behind on C4, moving it across, which is the kind of thing that could easily be missed. It's not an attack threat with the capstone.
Nope, but with the 2 on C4.
But with the 2 on C4, so that and it also gives you a pretty significant positive flat count potential. Okay, Gruppler decides not to go for that, but instead just captures.
I like a wall here.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually,
I mean,
no, it's hard because if he walls, then you get 3C5 to the left, 1-2, which is a +3 flat count differential move, and completely throws away black's vertical threat on the left hand side.
It does, but the wall on A3 can then jump up onto A5 and
yeah, that's true.
Release the things in there. This is definitely getting down to that kind of really tight end game situation, and it's a good thing for both players that they've been playing relatively quickly. Gruppler's still got 8 minutes left on the clock, and Pluto just under 7. So they've both got time, if they want to really think through these moves as we move towards the end game. It looks like Pluto's got slightly fewer reserves left, so he's going to potentially have the opportunity to. But I think they've both got 9 or 10 left in their reserve, so we're still a little way away from the end of the game being really imminent.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, a wall is probably the best choice there for black. Decides to go for the capture first, though.
Now it's really tempting to throw that capstone up onto C5.
Now he's got a wall on D5.
Yeah, that is a threat there. With the spread across from c5 onto f5.
That's why that wall's got to be dropping here on d5.
Yeah, I don't really see any other. I mean, I suppose you could now bring the capstone across onto f3. That would.
Yeah, that
would
would
work,
stop the
but-
threat, but or bring f5 down, but that's not great.
Yeah, does
Goes for the wall, which I think is the smart play. Although this is a hard capstone that can go ahead and smash that and do some work with it. And if I'm
Yeah,
white
depending on-
here, I'm gonna want to do something to. I don't want to spread this stack just yet. I'm fine with black taking it with their wall, I think. And if I'm white, I want to do something maybe up at like f6 or something like that where I can do some damage on the next turn.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, if I was black here, I would be looking to, okay, and gruppler prevents that from happening. What I was going to suggest was actually chucking a wall down on c4 for black before you capture that stack, so that the cap throw isn't an option. But gruppler going with what Goelja in the chat was suggesting, which is just immediately throwing up onto that stack, making a really powerful hard capstone stack there.
And now it's looking a lot better for white. I'd say white is probably going to be winning this flat game if they play it right.
Yeah, definitely has, with that capstone being much more mobile, much more central.
I'm looking
white's-
at, for white, taking this stack and moving it all the way onto that A file, then being able to come down and make crazy flat count differential moves and smashing the wall on A3 and doing all sorts of work over there. I think that's got a lot of potential to move it over left.
We could definitely see that happening. I think, so interesting, Pluto plays on f6, which I'm not sure that does much for him. It's potentially looking to make a vertical threat with like cap smash onto e2, which is now a possibility. But that just feels like a little bit too far away for him when I expect to see, c6 here
Now
from
we've got the
gruppler.
threat that
With the
black
threat
needs to
that-
stop. And they're going to have to stop it with either making a capture on probably b1 or b2. A capture on c6 will just get recaptured. A wall
or
is
just
good
the
too
wall
at
on
c3.
So now we could well see that spread to the left that you were suggesting onto a5.
Or, and hear me out on this one, you take the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from this stack, bring them down, and then smash on C3. And that's attack threat by spreading the remaining to the right. But now we're looking at close to a board fill again. And
So
let's,
how's the flat count?
yeah, let's look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 for black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for white. So black is still ahead in terms of flat count.
Yeah, so gruppler is definitely going to have to be careful here and
black's trying to force it.
Yeah, and interestingly, now I'm not sure what. I mean, gruppler can't really do anything with that big stack.
Nope, because
At the
it will
moment,
just
because
leave a flat win.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to do something like
capturing with one of these walls. C2 minus maybe. Okay, captures up.
And that is attack threat for white.
Threat.
Black can fill in with a flat and stop it.
Yeah. Or
a wall.
Or a wall. And yeah, he's still got enough of a lead on the flats that he can afford to place the wall if he wants to.
And if he does wall there, then he can capture up or over, and either way liberate a captive and make more positive flat count differential moves, and hinder that whole vertical line that white has going on that right-hand side. I think I like black playing either a wall or a flat on e4 here. Ooh. Unexpected.
Okay.
What's this all about then?
That's a very good question. So that doesn't advance Pluto's flat count at all immediately. It's a neutral move, like a +0 move, which is effectively equivalent to placing a wall.
Yeah.
It does give now, sort of spreading either up onto e6 or down onto e4, a positive, but like a +2 move. And it obviously, most importantly, cuts off the attack threat for now. And it gets that capstone more. So I could see maybe what Pluto is thinking is looking to now do something like 3e5 minus, then bring the capstone, or you could just do 2e5 minus and then take the capstone across onto f4, and then you've got a big flat count spread going down the f file.
And Goel's just saying that 3e2 minus, this wall stack for white coming down, and then able to make a +3 move on the next turn would be fantastic for flat count for white. And so I do see that potential as well. There's a lot now, and also moving 3e2 minus keeps black from spreading down and smashing this this wall.
Yeah.
If he were so inclined, which I don't know that he would be.
Yeah, and that's a good point from Guelch as well, is by doing 3e2 minus, you are freeing up an extra space, keeping a little bit further away from that board fill, although now that Pluto is down to only 5 flats left in his reserve, I think the board fill is looking less likely as the way of ending the game than as opposed to Pluto just running out of flats.
That's why I think that on the previous move, instead of this capstone throw, I really like a wall or a flat here. Probably a wall on e4. It just seems to do so much at once and really pins this stack where it is. And right now, the stack can move.
Yeah.
Not a ton, but it can. In fact, like, could it spread left at this point and even the flat count out? Nope, but we got attack threat now.
Decides to go down instead. So I imagine Pluto will just bring the capstone down onto e4. Cut that off.
And that's what makes sense to me.
This does give then the spread to the left is now a +4 move.
And if he spreads to the left, not only is that a +4 move, but it's also attack threat by throwing the f4 stack up onto f6.
Yeah.
And it can smash the wall on a3.
So
I do really think that move from black on 34 was a mistake. And I think that it enabled white to do a lot more on their turn. And now it's sort of white is while they're currently behind on flats, I think they have a lot more potential to get ahead and to win this. Whereas before, it looked like black could kind of force where they were going and force white to make some concessions, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen now.
Yeah, I understand the thinking behind it from Pluto. I do think that the wall placement was probably slightly better. Like now, I think so. If you capture over onto F4 to prevent that throw upwards,
White smashes on A3
white
and creates a
smashes
road
a
threat.
yeah. Then you play like D5 to the left, maybe, or C3 up.
I
But
like
then
C3 up better because you got the potential to recapture on B4.
Yeah, for sure. Like at this point, Pluto just needs to do whatever it takes to shut down these road threats. I still feel like if it ends up with a flat win, my money is probably on Pluto just because that spread now. Like if white does go for the smash down onto A3, those captives on B4 and A4 are not quite sitting ducks, but okay. Notable that the smash now is attack threat, both with smashing onto B3 or just spreading down onto A2. But both of those do still get cut off by black capturing
Onto B4.
B4. Yeah.
And so black is setting up some positive flat count differential moves right now with that B4 stack threatening that, and also now with the capstone able to spread downward. So I think we're going to see here 2C4 to the left.
Yeah,
it makes a
absolutely.
lot of sense, and I don't see why you would do anything else.
Yeah, and this is one of the really tricky things about endgame play, particularly when you're looking at the flat count, is when do I make those spreads which are going to put all these captives, which are under my capstone, into a more vulnerable position. Like, for example, we were talking about the 3E2 minus and then spreading across to the left. Well, that spread across to the left, you don't want to do until the last possible moment, because then D2 capturing down would be able to release a black captive, and you're kind of opening yourself up to positive flat count moves for your opponent in response. So you really want, and that's also why it's so important to be, or why it's so valuable to be the player who has fewer reserves left and therefore is in control of when the game ends.
And it looks like right now black is ahead in terms of fewer reserves, has I think 2 or 3 fewer reserves. We did see that 3A4 plus to move away from this, and I think at this point you take that wall stack and maybe spread it upwards, or you start playing some flats. I think playing flats would have been better. Maybe playing a flat here at E4 off to the right, something like that, I think would have been pretty good. And now white wants to smash that wall, get that back, and that's why I think maybe the E4 move would have been better, just playing a flat there.
Yeah, Pluto could have afforded to wait at least on that capture and give white less time to potentially do things like smashing walls.
Here's a thought: you take this big stack on B5 and bring the whole thing up onto B6. It's a negative move, yes. However, then you can move it off to the right. And if you move it off to the right and maybe you stop it instead of on E6, you stop it on D6, then white can't spread it downward because they've got that black wall in the way. So you're using sort of the other walls to hem in white's capstone, then you can do your own thing after that.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to do something with that also. I don't like the idea of just letting white smash here. You could actually play B6 to the left, and that would prevent the smash because white would have to leave all those black flats behind. You could just spread down for the road, but capturing with a flat at this stage is
probably not advisable, just giving yourself another liability. Yeah, I think that's an interesting suggestion, capturing up on, moving the whole stack up onto B6. And like if and Pluto does go for that, and now if Gruppler wants to keep chasing that that stack, is going to have to make a negative flat count move as well.
And it's also
Going
important to
up
note the
onto A6.
time. Gruppler down to 2 minutes 20 seconds, Pluto just under 2 minutes. So they are pretty pressed for time right now. I know that I start to panic if I'm below 5 minutes even on the clock. But that's just me, and I tend to play way too quickly anyway, so I'm hardly ever at that time on the clock. But yeah, this is where I think we're going to see time start to come into play here when they're making these big moves. Now, with that move, it's tempting to move left and to capture the A5 stack, but I think that Black wants to move to the right and make the plus 5 move.
Yeah, I agree. That
Boom,
makes
plus 5 move.
And now, where does White go from here? I mean, Black is now massively ahead on the flats. That's 5, 10.
Now Black
13,
just
15,
places.
15 to 9, and I think you can just out for the win almost.
Yeah,
You do
I mean,
need to
you've
be a
got
little
the
bit
attack threat
careful.
here from White.
This is attack threat. Yeah.
Yeah, smashing the wall on B3.
So imagine capture over onto B1, maybe if Pluto sees it, of course, and this is definitely the time of the game where you can easily miss that kind of thing, but Pluto does not miss it. And now the question for Gruppler is, how do I keep making enough threats? Okay, that, to be honest, that feels... I was going to say it feels a little bit like a concession move, just because, and that's an excellent wall placement, I think. The playing 3 E2 minus there would have felt like Gruppler was retaining a little bit more of a chance to do something in this spot, but
I think the idea was bring this stack down for the positive flat on differential move and then be able to throw the wall to the left, capture onto B1.
Yeah, I do think that was probably the idea.
But yeah, this looks over. I think
that C1 wall placement, I think, is the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and so I think on the next turn, Black can place at E4. So we get the B6 come up. Yeah, that doesn't do anything. So E4, I think, for Black. And then he can even make the positive flat hand differential move, spreading this stack down onto F3 and F2. And that threatens a road by smashing the wall on D2. And that is very close to Tinue, in addition to just killing it on flats. But I think it's almost Tinue. The only move he's got is like 3E1 to the left after that. So
okay, interesting. I was expecting Gruppler there to play 2B5 plus, having played on B6 to give that capstone the reach to go and smash the wall with all the flats under it. C5 plus, I'm not really sure what that achieves. To be honest, I mean, it gives you a +2 move onto D5, but there are 2 walls there that are just gonna grab that stack, and
Black can just keep flatting out to win here. I would have
liked, with only 2 left.
Yeah, I would have liked to see the F4 spread down for the tack threat. I think that would have been really fun because there was literally only one move that White had to stop that, and that's the 3E1 left. Yeah. And then from that point, like it might be Tinue, I think that spread, but I mean it's still going to be a game one for Pluto if he just keeps placing. Even right now,
Pluto can just place his last 2 pieces. There's no way, like, Gruppler would have had to make attack threat this turn in order for Pluto to not be able to just flat out for the win.
And there it is. That was a tough one. That was touch and go for a while. There were some big back and forth moves that were pretty fun.
Yeah, both players looked at different periods of the game as though they might be ahead, but Pluto showing his class, pulling out the win. Probably now just double checking the flat count.
And I know that's what happened when I played against Nohat, and at the end I was up by flats, but I think I counted like 10 times. And I was recording too, and I was sitting there counting the flats over and over again.
Yeah.
But he wins 15
I know
to
the
12. PlutoTheBrave takes game 2. So he takes game 1 and game 2, and that is it for this match. PlutoTheBrave takes it and continues climbing up the ladder on the tournament standings. He is down in, it looks like 15th place right now, but with that sweep of one player, that should be pretty solid. So good game, and Gruppler did do a great job in game 2. Definitely put up a pretty dang good fight up against Pluto, which is commendable because Pluto is a very strong player for sure.
Yep, very good game to watch, and definitely some excellent play from both players there. And just Pluto being able to hang on and as Black forced the game to the flat win. And I think definitely did a really good job navigating the end game with time counting down to ensure the flat win at the end.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the description below for all things TAC, specifically the TAC Discord, which is where you can find people to play with online, whether it be through playtac.com or on the Discord itself, asynchronous play, correspondence games, where you don't have a time limit. You can play one move a day if you'd like to. A lot of fun, a lot of learning goes on there, a lot of other resources available on that Discord as well for learning, improving, and all sorts of other things, even homemade sets. Anyway, that is all. Thanks for watching, and until next time, have a great day and happy tacking.